Hello and welcome to the Daily Newscast within the United Countries special by the First Ukraine. You can find us at the frequencies available at our website firstua.com. Victoria Zabian is working for you in the studio. Thank you for joining us. Ukrainian army is moving away from Debaltseve since 6 a.m. On the eve, Russian terroristic troops had broken into the city. Journalist of Hromadske television Anastasia Stanko has posted a photo in the network on which Ukrainian soldiers leave the city. It is signed as many militaries go out of the city on foot. Already on the road, Ukrainian units pick them. There is also a journalist Inna Varanitsa working there. She told 128th Brigade and 40th Battalion of Territorial Defense Kryvbas have went out of the city. Also, journalists met on the road Battalion Lviv. On the way, one after another ambulances went, which took the wounded people. President of Ukraine Petro Poroshenko called the withdrawing of Ukrainian troops from Debaltseve organized, well-planned. He said about this before his leaving to the ATO zone. President underlined that the assigned task of armed forces of Ukraine had been completely done.
Our parts and troops organized and gone according to plan. They gone out completely with military equipment, tanks, armed infantry, with self-propelled artillery units, with vehicle technical and by these vehicles. According to my order of the Supreme Commander that I told yesterday after Russian military banned the OSCE representative who moved to Debaltseve, they had to witness to willingness to take away our heavy artillery and vehicles and to demonstrate the absence of encirclement.
And first international reaction on the events around Debaltseve had become a resolution of UN Security Council, which assembled on urgent meeting. This resolution encouraged to stop fire on the east of Ukraine and demands to respect sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. All 15 members with one accord had voted for this document. This resolution, the first document which had been adopted by Security Service after 6 months of meetings concerning the crisis around Ukraine. All previous projects were blocked by Russia, which has veto rights. Resolution of UN means that any resistance to peace process in Ukraine becomes a crime against peace.
International leaders engage in rigorous, exhaustive negotiations to get Russia to commit to peace in Geneva, in Normandy, in September in Minsk, in Berlin in February, and then again in Minsk on February 12th when the implementations were signed, and now in New York. Yet Russia's commitments have no bearing on the actions of its soldiers and the separatists they back on the ground. Mr. President, the United States has maintained the same position across 30 meetings before this Council with respect to Ukraine. Let me reiterate that position. We are for peace in Ukraine. We are for Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, territorial integrity, and unity. We are for ending the violence in eastern Ukraine that has taken more than 5,600 lives since last April.
We're not pretending anything. We're not pretending. We proposed a certain course of action. No one listened to us. We warned about the consequences. Sadly, those consequences are as they have been. Now, for us, this is all happening on our borders. We made our choice. It's set out in the Minsk agreements. In today's statement, once again, in the Russian statement, it was international law again, was once again trampled all over. They have their law. I don't know how they're using it. I don't know. As to the constitution, what we're rejecting and what Russia is constantly trying to interfere in is they're trying to tell us how we should develop, what our constitutional order should be, what the next constitution should look like.
Canada provides new sanctions against Russia. There are 37 Russians and Ukrainian citizens in EU list which are against territorial integrity of Ukraine. More 17 companies and structures are in this list. Singer Josip Kobzon, anchor Dmitro Kiselyov, leaders of self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, terrorist Givi and Motorola, and also Rosneft company. Sanctions were provided in return to escalation of the aggression on the east of Ukraine, an attack of Mariupol, written on the website of Canadian Prime Minister. And today, currency debtors of Ukrainian banks assembled around the government district. They gathered near Ukrainian House. They demanded to resolve the problem with currency credits. Near 100 people claimed that they want currency credits to be transferred to hryvnia according to course of data when the credit had been taken. Protesters say that during 10 months they are trying to solve this problem and to make MPs to adopt special law projects.
People are determined because despite the fact that today's winter ex-moratorium executive service come and evict people, children, disabled people. What does it mean? They don't care. Bankers benefits financial illiterate people and their means of marketing gimmicks to impose their certainty credits.
Anniversary of mass shooting in the center of Kyiv. On 18th of February, 1 year ago, opposition moved from Maidan Independence Square to Ukrainian parliament with peace march. Activists were going to support voting for return of old constitution of 2004. Parliament was surrounded by police and bandits, and peace protest action had turned to mass confrontation. Then authority officially stated about 11 dead people, but activists say that there were a lot of more. The chronography of that day in our story next.
On the morning of the February 18th, the peaceful march for the picketing of the Ukrainian parliament began here. The column of the several thousands at Institutska Street went in the direction of parliament. Eyewitnesses say that a part of people had shields and sticks. The march passed the checkpoint at Hrushevsko Street and faced the Berkut border. These are first victims at both sides of the barricades. I was standing there and observing. They were shooting there. I was standing and observing. People were breaking through. They broke the door. The pavement has been used. You could hear shots. Ambulances were taking away those who were badly wounded. Some were being helped right at the front line. I have near 40 people, 12 badly wounded. One patient had his wrist teared off this morning. These girls are witnesses of those events. Oksana was in Women's 100 of Maidan and recalls how police were dispersing the protesters. They were beating all in a row. If the person is in the military uniform, 2 times harder. If there was a woman, they were still beating. They were even beating those who were lying. The person is unconscious and still had been beaten up by them. How many people died in Mariinsky? Many of them were thrown to the sewerage. When maintenance were cleaning, many were thrown to the garbage cars. The same was at Hrushevsko Street, where they were removed by garbage trucks. The part of activists were detained by police. No one will avoid the responsibility for today's event. Activists were edged by security force toward Maidan. The security service of Ukraine demanded from protesters to go away till the 6 p.m. Otherwise, radical measurements were promised. We need those who are beyond the Maidan perimeter to penetrate here, to Maidan, by any possible ways. People were still joining the Euromaidan. Around midnight, the Ministry of Internal Affairs confirmed 11 deaths of protesters. More than 200 asked for a medic's help. At night, conflicts between Maidan people and security forces continued. Olesa Varlamova, Dmytro Shanchuk, Alexandra Samoilenko, First Ukraine.
700 heroes are commemorated in different Ukrainian cities. In the center of capital, there was a funeral service. Activists are trying to remember the terrible events.
When I pulled out with the pieces of corpses, I was glad that I was still moving, because I have not only injuries and shell shock, I was in captive. On Maidan I was tortured with other priests too. We came to Verkhovna Rada. Everything was finished at 15 minutes past 2. We saw a lot of people, storm and truce. I think there were a lot of foreign special services, a lot of Russians. They beat us after all of that.
This dark day will stay in the history of Ukraine. Let's do everything to stop the aggressor and bring peace back to our houses. It was the United Country newscast by the First Ukraine. You can find more details at our website, firstua.com. Victoria Zabian was working for you in the studio. We wish you only good news. Take care and goodbye.